Hi, friends! Welcome to the Overcomers, a movement and a group of people who have overcome, and they've got a story. That's what the Overcomers is all about. You sharing your story. Why? Because there is power in your story, and people need you. They need your voice. They need your story of hope, faith, and inspiration that where they're at right now is not the end. They need to know if you can overcome, so can they. Today, I'm excited to share with you another story of one such overcomer. So let's go check out who it is. I'm honored to be here today with my friend Sara Beay. Sara, welcome to the Overcomers.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So a few things about Sara in case you don't have the pleasure of knowing her like I have had the total pleasure. Sara is a successful entrepreneur and business owner, an amazing mom of 5, joining us from Mukwonago, Wisconsin. What a fun name that is to say. I think that's the first time I've said it.
You did pretty well.
She's overcome a lot in life, from losing her biological father in a car accident before she was even born, physical abuse and molestation, to living paycheck to paycheck and having no clue how to start a business. Now they've got 3 businesses, 2 of which are making multiple 6 figures. She learned to not let her own self-limiting beliefs and others stop her. But what I'm blown away most with you, Sara, is your drive to succeed. You truly don't let anything stop you. Your story is one from coming from a place of being the total underdog to now leading the pack and leading the way in so many aspects of life. You haven't let where you came from or where you've ever currently been at stop you. You choose to continue to fight for your freedoms, your businesses, your family, and for you. And you've had shocking results and broken records because of it. I mean, come on. What was the actual business growth percentage this last year from the year before? I'm pretty sure it was astronomical.
Well, last year was 40%. The year before was 25%. So do the math.
Yes, like I said, astronomical, breaking records. So, without further ado, Sara, take us on that journey. How did you go from where you once were and where you came from to where you are now?
I think it's always been a drive. So my father was killed in a car accident, as you mentioned, before I was even born. It was just me and my mom early on, and my grandma was a very influential part in that. And grandma grandma taught me, all the motherhood, well, not all, but a lot of my early years as far as motherhood and giving hearts, because she actually ran several food pantries, and I was always her tag along, and she raised 11 children of her own. And so she had that. And then my mom, when I was about 4.5, met a man, and then met, married, and had a baby within a year. And he grew to be my stepdad. I don't even consider him a stepdad. He's amazing. Um, so we went from, single parent to having all of a sudden a lot of change within a year. And honestly, that was hard at first. And then they went on to have basically 5 more sisters. And I was never treated as a stepsister or anything like that, even though none of them are full siblings. But and had a great childhood, but there was always a little bit of like, I give my dad a lot of credit because, he came from bachelor life to married with a child. Didn't really have all the skills that he has now in communication. So, there was some, and he and I have very different gems as you learn in First Step to Success. Now, looking back, I can totally understand some of it, but at the time, it kind of cut that. It kind of created a wedge over the years, just because of lack of, like, I had made the father figure into this perfect man, and looking back, nobody can fill those shoes. I mean, it was impossible. And so when he didn't fill those shoes, there was some anger, bitterness, resentment on my part, and eventually on his part. And so I grew up. I was very blessed, though. I mean, I had a great childhood, and then was able to have horses and do all kinds of things. But there was still like a missing connection. And so when I turned roughly around 16, an older man came into my life who happened to be my best friend's father, and kind of groomed me into my molestation because I was just looking for that fatherly figure. And I always kind of knew something was off, but I didn't have the safe place to necessarily tell anybody at the time or to fully understand. Because even at 16, I was a very naive in a lot of that area. And so that lasted about 2 years on and off. And then finally, I was like, enough is enough, worked up the courage to cut that off. And that really meant losing not only that relationship with that family and hurting a lot of the community that we were involved in, but also losing my best friend at the time. And then I fell into suicidal depression era of just trying to navigate all that, and ended up in a lot of counseling. And it was the hardest years of my life, but I was determined somewhere deep down, like, I'm going to go through this and I'm going to be able to share with others,
Mm.
like, you can overcome this, you can do something beyond this. And so that was my goal. Like, I didn't care what I had to go through. I, I was in the middle, and I didn't care what I had to go through or what pain in order to grow and to get through it. And so, and it was kind of funny because a lot of my peer circles knew who these people were. And so it was like that awkward, like, how much you say, what do you say, who do you talk to, who's gonna believe you, who's not. And so I worked and navigated through all of that. And then probably, 3 years into it, or after I came out, so it had been 3 years, there was still some drama going on and just frustration, and people understanding who this gentleman really was and impact on his own personal kids, and trying to navigate how do you help them. And it was hard, it really was. I actually ended up talking to Aaron at the time, who was actually interested in another girl. So we would talk about his girl, and I was talking to him because he was a very safe place for me to be able to figure out the frustration of some of our other friends, because he knew enough of the circle. And that whole relationship ended up, within a year and a half, we ended up getting married. But it was, looking back at it, it was very interesting because, like, my trust in men had been so broken, and he knew that, and he was willing to honor me and to take that journey very slowly. And actually, we never even kissed until our wedding day, and we had no physical. And at the time, it was like, well, this is weird, but now it was like that level of trust and intimacy really has just propelled us into different places. And so, I mean, he was always the biggest fan of mine and number one. And throughout the years, early marriage, whatever, we started several business, or I started several businesses. But I had no business background. I had no business skills. I knew accounting, that was it. And they did okay, but it was always kind of never really successful, or eventually they weren't the right fit for where I was at. And so, but I learned a lot. I learned, some of the aspects of sales, some of the aspects of, how to develop a customer base, connection, fortune in the follow up, all of that. And so fast forward, I had 5 children in 7 years, and that was crazy in and of itself. A couple years off just to be mom, and but that itch to always do something more than mom was there.
Mm,
And like while I love being a mom, I'm also I needed something to stretch my brain, to challenge me in other aspects, to have adult interaction. um, and so I decided to use my accounting degree and work for a staging business, which it was good. It really was. But she was in a place that she didn't necessarily want to grow her business. And I was like, you've got no website, no marketing. Like, even though I didn't know what to do per se, I was like, we got to do something.
mhm.
And she just didn't want to. And I was like, okay. And then I was kind of complaining and whining to Aaron one day about it. And he's like, knowing his gem, the fact that he ever said that at that point in our life, I'm like, what? And he doesn't even remember saying, which is funny, but for me, it like stopped me dead in the track. And he was like, why don't you start your own business? And I'm like, because we have 5 children, we're living paycheck to paycheck, you're gone 60 hours a week. They're all under the age of, oh gosh, they would have been 9, 10 years old with the oldest one. So like babysitters and all of that. And he said this to me like several times, and I was just kept going, why do they keep saying this? Like, but then I decided, all right, I'm just gonna explore this and see if this is even a good fit. So I talked to one of my realtor friends, and I'm like, I had her over for coffee. I'm like, what do you think about me starting a staging business? Like, think the market needs this? What do you think? And she's like, listened, and then it was fine, but it wasn't like, yeah, you need to do this, or no, you shouldn't. It was just kind of this conversation. But then a week later she called me, and she's like, I got a job for you. I'm like,
Mhm.
but I'm doing this, okay? And she's like, no, just it's all their stuff, you don't need anything, just give us opinion. I'm like, okay, I can handle that. Sorry, I can't get rid of this talk. um so I went there, did the job, turned out fine. Week and a half later, so 2 weeks later, something like that, another person called me. I don't even know who this is. She's like, I hear you're doing staging. I'm like, maybe, I don't know. And so she's like, it's an empty house. I'm like, I don't even have a business name at this point, much less a business plan, much less financing, nothing. And
Mm.
I'm like, well, I'll look at it. And so I went and looked at it and pulled numbers out of thin air. And I went on vacation because I didn't even try selling it. Um, and I'm in vacation in Michigan, and I get the phone call. We want you to do it. I'm like, oh crap. So I went back to. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And I talked to Aaron. I'm like, we took the little money we had in savings. I'm like, worst case, I'll just sell the furniture we don't use. And I schedule it for like 4 days after we get back for vacation. And I start, Facebook marketing and Craigslist. And so I arranged it that we were driving home north of Chicago. We were going to pick up a U-Haul truck, go pick up this furniture. Then I was going to go to IKEA and buy some more stuff, and he was going to take the kids home. Well, Chicago is always crazy. So we were late to the U-Haul. They actually had closed. Aaron goes in there and he's like, I'm not leaving without a truck. I mean, they had just closed. He's like, you got to open the register. You got to give me this truck. Like after 20 minutes, he finally comes out with the truck. I'm like, oh, Lord. And I go pick up this furniture and we get home. So that was Saturday. Sunday night, I'm at Home Goods, which is in like 30 minutes away, and I'm buying a chair because I needed a specific chair. And I get a phone call from Aaron. He's like, our son had a lawnmower accident. His foot is damaged.
Mm.
Click. I'm like, I don't even know if the foot's attached. I don't know what's going on. He's like, I'm taking him to the ER. So you throw the furniture in the car, drive like a mad woman 30 minutes. I'm like calling him. He's not answering. I'm panicking. Get to the ER. He almost lost his pinky toe. We ended up spending the night at Children's Hospital. He had surgery the next day. That night, Aaron recruited some of his friends. They went and unloaded this U-Haul at this lady's house for me. And then the next day, after no sleep, 2 nights in a row, I go and stage this house. I'm like, oh Lord, this is a disaster. Spent my way too much time there, was exhausted. I came home and fell asleep, and then ended up my son's foot is fine, but he had to have a couple surgeries. Everything's good. But I just was like, this is never going to work. And that house sold and they loved me, and that was the launch of the business. So kind of fast forward, it was 6 months to a year into it, and I had basically decided that every dime I earned, I would just reinvest back in. So we had a conversation. I started pulling some of our little bit of personal money, but every dime I just put back into it, and kind of tried to figure out what I was doing, how far I was going to take. And it was pretty slow the first year. I mean, it really was, looking back at it. And then I kind of was at a place of like, do I do something with this hobby or what do I do? And the great world of Google and Facebook, here's your thoughts. This ad for this free book kept popping up, First Steps to Wealth on Facebook. And I'm like, fine, I'll order the stupid free book, even though these people are going to hound me like crazy. Here's the book. And I read it on vacation the next year. And I was like, this is pretty good. So then I started following the lady, the chick that wrote it. And she was doing events all over the country for Steps to Success. And I was like, okay, I don't have the money to attend these. Following them, in Washington State and Texas. And finally it came to Chicago in July of 2019, I think. And I was like, all right, I have no excuse. It's an hour. I'm going to go. So I ended up going, didn't know a soul.
Mm.
And I went and I'm like, standing in line, and all these people are like, this is my 25th event. This is my 8th event. And here in the line. And I'm like, what calls did I just find? What did I just do? And so I sat through the first day and I was just like drinking through a fire hose. And then the second day I was like, oh crap. And I called my husband and I was like, why did I just like get more information of life and spiritual business than I've ever gotten at a church? And how do I like what's going on here? And so, and I just basically just sat there and tried to soak in as much as I could. But it gave me this whole like renewed sense of like, I could be a good mom. I could run a business. I could homeschool my kids. And even though I didn't have everything I needed at that point, it gave me hope to take it from a hobby to a business. And so I didn't attend another event that year. But then I decided to buy tickets for January of 2020. Am I doing the timeline right? 2020.
Mhm.
And um, And so I bought the tickets for 2020. I bought them over our anniversary, and told my husband he was coming with me. And I bought some of her stuff, and one of them being the Time Secrets. And there was a section in the Time Secrets of your boss honoring your time that you agreed to. And at the time, Aaron's like, "Who's this chick? Whatever. You do your thing. I'll do mine." He was overworked, and I kept trying to like, "You gotta listen to this. Gotta listen." He wasn't gonna. And finally, I'm like, "Just listen to this one section in Time Secrets about your boss honoring your time." Because at that time, he was being asked to work overtime without overtime pay. I'm like, "This isn't. It's taking too much time from the family. It's not right, and it's expected for extended period of time with no end in sight, not like a couple days or anything like that." And so he listened to that, and he was like, "You're right, like this isn't working." And then he got the guts, a whole nother story, but ended up getting two teaching positions totally out of his field, but with his like teaching wasn't his field, but of the field of HVAC. And it wasn't quite enough to make what he was making at his job because they're both were part-time, but it was enough for him to consider quitting his full-time job and for me to have the opportunity to grow the business. So in January 2020, he quit his job. And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to this event. You're coming with me." And he's like, he couldn't. He just could not come. And he's like, financially, it was an issue. Mentally, he was not in the space to hear it. And so I went. I ended up taking one of my employees with me, actually my only employee at the time, who happened to be my cousin. We went. It was phenomenal. But I was like, so good. Well, we all know what happened in March of 2020. The world shut down. So then started doing virtual, but my business during that time went from barely scraping by to, I think that was the first year we did six figures. And yeah, 2020. And meanwhile, then, Aaron was at a place, he was just so burnt out and so overwhelmed. He didn't even realize, I didn't even realize it because it was just life. My, let's see, at the time he would have been 12-year-old son was just a mess as far as like emotional regulation. I mean, we would have 2 to 3 hour just explosions of emotion, anger, bitterness, frustration, threatening to leave, threatening to kill himself, even though I could never figure out why. But I was at my wit's end with that. Plus, I had four other kids watching this. And so when his dad came home and started working with them, and then I started to understand gems better to be able to communicate to him. I mean, and this is just a testimony out of business. He just turned 15, got his first job at a local landscape garden shop. He's been there 3 weeks. He's gotten 2 raises. They love him and his second best employee of the teenage kids. I'm like, and this is, from anger, bitterness to just total 180. And he hasn't even been to First Steps yet. He's not for him yet. um, and it's just, having the skill set to pour into him. And so kind of back it up, it's just 2020, Aaron started getting bored. He started a business, which before then wasn't even in the thought. And he did six figures from, I think it was like May to the end of the year. And he did so well with it. And he didn't even try to like petition anybody. I mean, no marketing, nothing. But that was like just kind of a year of like, it was terrifying in the beginning because it's like, no health insurance, none of this. What do you do? How do you handle that? To just God just opening those doors and knowing that even though we didn't have every step, it was like, here's the tools. follow the instruction. Here's the tool, follow the instruction. Here's the tool, follow the instruction. And that's really what we did. And 21 and 22 were phenomenal years. And now going into 23 has been a year of a lot more growth because I'm pregnant with number 6, which was not in the plan. Took me about 3 months to like wrap my brain around that. And I'm 41. Like, I'm old.
No, you're
And
not.
I don't wear that label, but in pregnancy world, I'm old. So, and it's funny because my baby's 8, and so I thought it was done. And just I have realized this past year the mental scars that were left from having the 5 children, which I love and they're doing amazing. But I was so burnt out. Like I just had this fear of going back to that place, going back to that place. And it's really been a year of soul searching of like, okay, what does it look like moving forward? How is it like, how is the business going to run? How is this going to run? And it's been seriously probably one of the hardest years as far as big decisions making. But I have the tools and the skill sets. And I also have the alignment with my husband. I mean, it's been like every front of our life has just totally changed in dramatic ways, but also having the skill set to communicate with those around me, be like, okay, this has got to happen and this has got to happen. And putting boundaries up where we didn't even realize we needed boundaries. And some of those have been very challenging, very challenging. But also like there's also some seeds and downloads that are coming yet that I know God is giving me, but it's like this sense of I'm giving you these challenges so that you can overcome them and not only overcome them, but thrive through them.
Yes.
Like, even okay, so I'm 8 months pregnant now, a month ago. So 7 months in, I got this like, I gave you this baby as a blessing because you needed to get out of the way in some areas, and this was the only way I could get you out of the way.
Ooh. Ooh.
And to me, that really hit me because I didn't realize how much of a bottleneck for my own business I was being, but also just forcing me to slow down, forcing me to reevaluate. My kids are getting bigger. I've got one that wants to drive, and I've got one that is coming, and everywhere in between, and making sure their needs are met and making sure their life is what it needs to be. And it's just been amazing. So my second oldest is 13, and he's watched all this, and he's always been the one in the background silently feeling, and he's done some this kid he's just watching you. And it's funny because I bring him in because he has attended First Steps of Success twice. And the first time he's like kind of kicking and screaming, but our rule is you have to attend once before you leave the house. The second, like at the end, I'm like, oh, how was it? He's like, well, I'm coming back. I'm like, oh, you are? And he's like, this for him to say that, I was just like, what? I'm like, well, what does that mean? He's like, I don't care if I have to walk to Texas for the next one. I'm coming back. I'm like, okay. And so he came back, and then there's another one coming in August. And well, I'm not going to be there because of the baby, but he's like, Mom, I'm going. I'm like, okay. And so at first I'm like, you have to pay for it, and you have to figure out how you're getting there, and we have to talk through because you're 13. But and so we figured all that out, and he's like, okay, I got to work so many hours to get the paycheck and stuff. But taking his personality of a pearl and one who sits in the background. I'm just like watching. And then reason I'm also telling you this is just because kids are watching you and you don't even realize it. And
Yes.
so he's telling you this, and then one of his friends who's in the robotics club comes over and is trying to recruit him, and he's done the robotics before, and I'm like, I wasn't there for the little chat they had, and so I'm talking to him. I'm like, so are you thinking about joining this or what? And he's like, no, I don't think I'm going to do it. I said, oh, why? He's like, well, there's a lot of time commitment. I'm like, okay, what 13-year-old thinks about time commitment?
Mhm.
Okay. And I said, well, but there's, chances for like scholarships and this and that that you can get going through this. And he's like, Mom, most millionaires don't have more than an eighth grade education. I don't know that I'm going to go to college. And I said, okay. He's like, I'm going to the next First Justice Act. I'm figuring out what business I want to run and
Woo!
see where that goes. I'm like, okay. And like he's like, that's gonna take if I join the robotics, it's gonna take away from me building a business.
Mm.
Like I may go to college, but I don't want it to be just to go get an education. He's like, I want to start now. I'm like, okay, I can't argue with you, kid. And so I'm just watching that, and you spend several more conversations, and even though it's terrifying, even though it's like against like there are no entrepreneurs in my family.
Mm.
I didn't come from a family that started business. You always had the safe 9 to 5 job. You got your pension. You did the basics. And while it's amazing and it's like as far as frugality, that reduction's amazing. My family was very good at that. But it's just like there's more to it than just working for the man. So that's kind of the story in the nutshell.
Yeah. What's so amazing to me is that, listening to, really a summary of your whole journey and all these different moments in your life, now you're at a place where you are getting to watch your own kids and realizing that they're watching you and they're not the only ones who have been watching you and being inspired, friend. Just like I know the people who are going to watch your interview and also be inspired at the journey that you have had. And when I think back on everything you even took us through today, starting with, when you were a child and being in that place where you were being molested, yet you chose to have the courage to say something. And then you're in the next season where you're dating Aaron and you had to choose to have the courage to trust when trust with men was shattered. Then you moved on to the season of starting a business. Yeah, having no idea how to start a business and doing it when? 2020, when the entire world is shutting down. So much courage. So you can see this pattern through your whole life of just an amazing amount of courage in situations that most people might say, I give up. This is too difficult. Have you seen what I'm facing? Have you seen what I'm going through? Have you seen what they did to me? But you have chosen not to have that mindset. I mean, sure, you had feelings you had to process through, but you made a choice in every single one of those seasons. And that choice was accompanied with so much courage. Where do you think that courage comes from?
Wondering that because there are days, even, I mean, you're pregnant, you're hormonal. I've been going through all of this again as far as like, do I keep going? Is this roadblock where I'm supposed to stop, or is this where I'm supposed to be like water and go around it?
Mhm.
And it's coming from a deep sense of knowing who you are and whose you are and
Mm.
what your heart is at. And that's where I figure like my courage is from. And yes, I do have some support, but like initially, I mean, Aaron was probably the only one who supported it. And to see where that business has gone and just to take on I've always had crazy dreams. I've always been the one with the crazy dreams, and you blew me off because that's just too big, or whatever. And I have realized, sometimes those dreams are planted inside you for a reason
Mhm.
and a season. Um, Even today, like, I didn't even tell you this part. We went to buy a vehicle for my husband, and there was another one there that I'm like, this is really might be a good fit for my business and stuff. And we ended up buying both vehicles, but it was funny because I reminded my husband, I'm like, 18 years ago when we were dating, we said one day we would be rich enough to afford this vehicle.
Mm.
And it was the exact vehicle. Now it's used. We paid cash for it. It's not brand new, but it was like just to see that
Mm.
come forward and making those decisions and those choices. Like, I have no desire to drive a brand new car. I don't care to drive a brand new car, but I'm going to spend my money and invest in a business or a commercial building or something that's going to give me return. And I guess it's just the courage to be different. I mean, I have 6 kids. Well, don't. And it's funny because, like, as far as being a woman entrepreneur, being a sixth kid, being a homeschool, mom, none of these circles I really fit into. But my goal is to do each one in their season and time, with help. That's been a huge thing for me. Like, I do not do this all by myself. I don't. I manage. Um, but also giving those people who have the dream put there for a reason. Don't stop. Don't
Yes.
let the world tell you you can't. There might be a valid reason that you need to slow down or change seasons, but I mean, we said we would buy this car 18 years ago. Today was the day. It made sense. Um, and it's just, I don't know what it is. I really don't, but it's just this like deep, if I don't, even if I fail, what do I have to lose?
Yeah. You lead me into my last question here as we close out the interview so perfectly, because you're right. All of us deep down have a desire for something, and it is planted there. So if you are feeling it, we are talking to you as you are listening to this interview. And so, friend, what would you say to that person right now who's been listening to your story, has been so inspired, hearing every different season and the courage that you have, that you knew deep down you could overcome what was right in front of you? Maybe they too have a dream, a desire to do something. What would you say to them right now?
A lot of people listen to my story and think that everybody was 100% on board or supportive, even my husband. Like, he was supportive to a point in the beginning. It's more, honor the people around you, but don't let them stop you from dreaming or going for it. Um, and through that honor and through the years, I mean, it took Aaron 2.5 years to get on board, like truly get on board. But once he saw what I like, that continual, like, one foot in front of the other, and there were tears, there was sweat, there was few swear words in there. um, you just do it. And it doesn't have to look perfect. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, the world just shows you all the perfection and all the pictures of perfect. I mean, yes, I stay home. My house right now is a royal disaster. It looks like a tornado came through. Like, I'm being real here. You can't even walk around across my kid's bedroom right now. My living room missing furniture, like that. But those are the choices that I make to fulfill the dreams of the bigger picture and not comparing yourself to others or their timeline.
Mhm.
And but just like if you didn't do it, Actually, the thing I think I fear more is if I was supposed to do it and I chose not to do it, what are the results of that?
Mm. The what happens if I don't? Yeah, real gut punch when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm gonna give it my best shot, and that's all I can do.
Yep. Well, I think we can definitely say you gave it your best shot and you continue to choose to give it your best shot. And you are having some authentic, real results that are inspiring a lot of people because of it. Sarah, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us on The Overcomers and to share your story of overcoming all of these things. Thank you for not giving up in your journey. Thank you for your courage to continue to keep getting up every time you got knocked down, for choosing to blaze the trail of freedom that you have, and for the way that you have led that path with honor, integrity, and passion. You are an amazing mom, wife, and CEO, and I am so freaking proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It has been an honor to be with you today on The Overcomers.
I appreciate it. Everything you're doing, Jen, is just amazing. Like just watching you from the beginning to and some of your journey is just it's amazing. It really is in your heart.
Thank you, friend. I received that. Wow, wasn't that powerful? Do you have an overcomer story? Do you know someone who needs to hear this message? Please share this video on your social platforms and tag us so we know who you are. Stay tuned as we share more overcomer stories in the weeks ahead. We're looking for you. We're looking for the overcomers.